The notification chime cut through the silence of our bedroom like a knife through flesh. 3:17 a.m., and Daphne's phone was lighting up the nightstand like a goddamn Christmas tree. My wife lay there, gone to the world, her auburn hair splayed across the pillow like spilled wine. Beautiful, even in sleep. Especially in sleep, when she couldn't lie to me with those green eyes of hers. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I shouldn't have looked. Any decent husband would have rolled over and gone back to sleep. But I'd stopped being decent about 3 months ago when I started noticing things. Little things. The way she'd flip her phone face down when I walked into a room. How she'd started working late every Tuesday and Thursday. The new perfume she claimed was a gift from the girls at work. The screen was still glowing when I leaned over. One message from a contact labeled simply T. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same place, same time. Don't stress about Colton. He doesn't have to know everything. I stared at those words until they burned into my retinas. Don't stress about Colton. That's me, by the way. Colton Reyes, 38 years old, logistics coordinator for a mid-sized shipping company, former amateur boxer, current fool, and apparently the kind of husband whose wife gets late-night texts about secret meetings. The phone's glow faded, plunging the room back into darkness. But my mind was wide awake now, racing like a hamster on a wheel. T. Who the hell was T? And what exactly didn't I need to know? I lay there for the next 4 hours, listening to Daphne's steady breathing, watching the digital clock crawl toward morning. By the time her alarm went off at 7, I'd already showered, dressed, and made coffee. I was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through my own phone like nothing had happened. "Morning, honey," Daphne said, padding into the kitchen in her silk robe. She kissed my cheek, and I caught that new perfume again, something expensive and unfamiliar. "Morning," I replied, not looking up from my phone. "Sleep well?" "Like a baby." She poured herself coffee, added cream with practiced efficiency. "I've got that late meeting tonight, remember? Probably won't be home until 9 or 10. Tuesday, right on schedule. Sure thing, I'll grab dinner with the guys at the Crowbar. The lie came easily. I'd gotten good at lying lately. Apparently, it was contagious in our household. After Daphne left for work, I sat in my home office staring at my computer screen without really seeing it. The room was cluttered with the debris of my life. Shipping manifests, old boxing gloves hanging from a hook, unpaid bills stacked like accusations. Everything looked the same as yesterday, but something fundamental had shifted. The ground beneath my feet had turned to quicksand. I'd been married to Daphne for 12 years. We'd built what I thought was a good life together in this decaying Rust Belt city that time forgot. Our son Jake was 10, smart as a whip, and the center of both our worlds. We had a modest house in a neighborhood where people still waved to each other, still pretended to care about property values and school board elections. But now I was wondering how long I'd been living in a lie. The smart thing would have been to confront her directly, ask questions, demand answers, maybe suggest counseling. That's what Dr. Phil would recommend. But I've never been accused of being smart. What I am is methodical. 12 years in logistics teaches you to track things, to follow paper trails, to understand supply chains and delivery schedules. So I decided to do some tracking of my own. The Crowbar sits on the corner of 5th and Main like a monument to better times. It's the kind of place where working men come to forget about their problems and middle-aged women come to find new ones. The neon sign flickers between open and OP, and the parking lot is more pothole than pavement. But the beer is cold, the fries are greasy, and nobody asks questions you don't want to answer. I'd been coming here since I was 21, back when I thought I might make something of myself in the boxing ring. The owner, Mickey Torino, still had my old amateur fight photos hanging behind the bar, right next to the dusty bottles of top-shelf liquor nobody ever ordered. "You look like somebody pissed in your cornflakes," Mickey said as I slumped onto my usual bar stool. He was pushing 60, built like a fire hydrant, with hands that had seen their share of violence back in his bouncer days. "Just work stuff," I lied, accepting the beer he slid across the scarred wooden bar. "You know how it is." Mickey nodded but didn't push. That's why I like this place. The Crowbar was Switzerland, neutral territory where a man could think without interference. I pulled out my phone and opened the family locator app. Daphne and I had installed it years ago, back when Jake started walking to school by himself. "For safety," she'd said, "so we always know where everyone is." The irony wasn't lost on me now. According to the app, Daphne was at Rosie's Café on the other side of town, not exactly on her usual route home from work. I zoomed in on the map, studying the location. Rosie's was one of those trendy coffee shops that served $15 sandwiches and had names for drink sizes that made no sense. The kind of place Daphne used to mock before she started her new job at the pharmaceutical company. I was 3 beers deep when my phone buzzed with a text from my wife. "Meeting running late. Don't wait up. Love you." Love you. 2 words that used to mean everything and now felt like a slap across the face. "Another round?" Mickey asked. "Better not. I've got some driving to do." The drive to Rosie's took 20 minutes through streets lined with empty storefronts and houses that had seen better decades. This whole city was like a patient on life support, technically alive but not really living. Factory jobs had dried up, young people moved away, and those of us left behind just tried to make the best of it. Rosie's Café occupied the ground floor of a converted Victorian house, all exposed brick and reclaimed wood. Through the large windows, I could see couples leaning across small tables, laptops glowing in the soft light, and there, in a corner booth, my wife. She wasn't alone. The man sitting across from her was tall, probably 6'2", with the kind of artificially perfect smile that suggested expensive dental work. His hair was styled in that deliberately messy way that takes an hour to achieve, and he wore a leather jacket that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. I parked across the street and watched them through my windshield. They weren't touching, weren't doing anything obviously inappropriate. But there was something in their body language, the way they leaned toward each other, the way Daphne laughed at whatever he was saying. It was intimate in a way that made my stomach clench. I sat there for 45 minutes, watching my marriage dissolve in real time. When they finally stood to leave, I got a better look at the mystery man. He was younger than me, maybe 35, with the kind of confident swagger that suggested he'd never been punched in the face. He walked Daphne to her car, gave her a hug that lasted just a beat too long, then climbed into a red BMW convertible. As they drove off in opposite directions, I memorized his license plate number. Old habits from my boxing days, always know your opponent. Back home, I sat in my dark living room, listening to the house settle around me. Jake was at his friend's house for a sleepover, so it was just me and the silence and the weight of what I'd seen. When Daphne came home at 10:30, I was pretending to watch TV. "How was your meeting?" I asked without looking at her. "Boring. You know how corporate stuff is." She kissed the top of my head, and I caught that perfume again. "I'm exhausted. Going to bed." "Sure thing. I'll be up in a bit." After she went upstairs, I opened my laptop and ran the license plate through a people search website. $20 later, I had a name: Trevor Holt, 37, owner of Holt's Premium Auto Sales. His address was listed as 1247 Maple Grove Drive, in the fancy part of town where the houses had circular driveways and the lawns looked like golf courses. I spent the next hour researching Trevor Holt online. His business website showed him posing next to expensive cars, all teeth and confidence. His Facebook page was a shrine to his own success, photos of exotic vacations, expensive restaurants, and a beautiful blonde woman identified as his wife, Elena. Trevor Holt was married, just like my wife. The pieces were starting to come together, and I didn't like the picture they were forming. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I'd used maybe 5 sick days in the past 3 years, so nobody questioned it. Instead of heading to the office, I drove to Holt's Premium Auto Sales. The dealership was exactly what I'd expected, a glass and chrome monument to automotive excess. Luxury cars gleamed under fluorescent lights, their price tags higher than most people's annual salaries. A banner across the front window proclaimed, "Trevor Holt, Dealer of the Year 2023. I parked across the street and waited. At 11:15, Trevor emerged from the main building, talking animatedly on his phone. Even from a distance, I could see that practiced smile, the way he gestured with his free hand like he was conducting an orchestra. He was everything I wasn't. Tall where I was average height, polished where I was rough around the edges, wealthy where I was solidly middle class. I could see why Daphne might be attracted to him. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I was still pondering that question when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Colton Reyes? The voice was female, crisp, professional. Depends who's asking. My name is Elena Holt. I think we need to talk. About what? About our respective spouses and what they've been doing together every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 3 months. We agreed to meet at a diner called Mel's, about halfway between my house and hers. It was the kind of place that served coffee in heavy ceramic mugs and employed waitresses who called everyone Hon. I arrived first, choosing a booth in the back where we could talk without being overheard. Elena Holt was even more beautiful in person than in her Facebook photos. Blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, blue eyes that missed nothing, wearing a simple black dress that probably cost more than my car payment. But there was something hard in her expression, a brittleness that suggested she was holding herself together through sheer force of will. "Mr. Reyes," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Thank you for meeting me. How did you get my number?" "Same way I found out about your wife and my husband. I hired a private investigator 3 weeks ago." She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "These were taken last Tuesday." The photographs were damning. Trevor and Daphne holding hands across a restaurant table. Trevor and Daphne kissing in the parking lot of a hotel. Trevor and Daphne entering room 237 at the Riverside Inn. I stared at the images until they blurred. "How long have you known?" "I suspected something was wrong about 2 months ago. Trevor started working late, taking mysterious phone calls, buying new clothes. All the classic signs." Elena's voice was steady, but I could see her hands trembling slightly. "I confronted him last week. He denied everything, of course. Called me paranoid, jealous, crazy. And now? Now I want him to pay for what he's done, to both of us." The waitress came by and we ordered coffee we didn't want, just to buy time to think. Elena spread the photos across the table like a poker hand. "What do you have in mind?" I asked. "I want to destroy him. Professionally, socially, financially. I want him to lose everything he values." Her blue eyes were cold as winter. "But I can't do it alone." "What makes you think I want revenge? Maybe I just want a divorce and to move on with my life." Elena smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "Because you're here, Mr. Reyes. Because you drove to his dealership this morning to get a look at him. Because you're angry, and anger is useful." She was right, of course. I was angry. Furious, actually. But I was also scared. Scared of what this meant for my marriage, for my son, for the life I'd built. "What did you have in mind?" I asked. "Trevor's greatest weakness is his ego. He thinks he's untouchable, that he's smarter than everyone else. We're going to use that against him." Elena leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I know things about my husband that could ruin him. Business dealings that aren't quite legal, tax issues, affairs before this one. But I need leverage to make sure he can't retaliate." What kind of leverage? Your wife works for Meridian Pharmaceuticals, correct? In the administrative department? I nodded. Trevor's been bragging to his friends about having an inside connection at a pharmaceutical company. Something about getting advance information on drug approvals, stock tips. If we could prove that Daphne was feeding him insider information, that's securities fraud. She could go to prison. Only if we report it to the SEC. But if we have evidence of it, we have something to hold over both of them. I sat back in the booth, processing what Elena was suggesting. It was elaborate, risky, and probably illegal in about 6 different ways. It was also exactly the kind of thing that might work. I need time to think about this, I said. Of course, but don't take too long. Elena gathered up the photographs and slipped them back into the envelope. I have a feeling our spouses are planning something. Trevor's been talking about taking a vacation, somewhere tropical. I doubt he's planning to take me. After Elena left, I sat in the diner for another hour, drinking coffee and staring out the window at the gray October sky. Everything in my life had been turned upside down in the span of 24 hours. Yesterday, I was a happily married man with a normal life. Today, I was plotting revenge with the wife of my wife's lover. But as I drove home, I realized something. For the first time in months, I felt alive. Angry, hurt, and confused, but alive. The game was on. Over the next week, I became a student of my wife's routine. I tracked her movements through the family locator app, noted when she made phone calls and to whom, observed her mood changes and new behaviors. It was like being a detective in my own life. What I discovered wasn't pretty. The affair had been going on for at least 4 months, maybe longer. Daphne had been systematically lying to me about her whereabouts, her work schedule, even her relationships with coworkers. She'd created an entirely separate life that I knew nothing about. But Elena had been right about something else. There was more to this than just connection. I started paying attention to Daphne's work conversations, the phone calls she took in the next room, the documents she brought home from Meridian Pharmaceuticals. On Thursday night, while Daphne was at another late meeting, I went through her home office. Hidden in a folder marked Personal 2023, I found copies of internal Meridian memos about drug trials, FDA approval timelines, and projected stock impacts. Information that would be incredibly valuable to someone looking to make strategic investments. Information that someone like Trevor Holt might pay handsomely for. I photographed everything with my phone, then put the documents back exactly where I'd found them. When Daphne came home that night, I was watching TV like nothing had happened. "How was your meeting?" I asked. "Productive," she said, not meeting my eyes. "We're making good progress on the quarterly reports." Another lie. According to the company website, quarterly reports weren't due until December. The next morning, I called Elena. "I think you're right about the insider trading," I said. "I found some documents that might interest you." We met again at Mel's diner, this time with me bringing the evidence. Elena examined the photographs on my phone, her expression growing more serious with each image. "This is perfect," she said finally. "Trevor's been making some very lucky stock picks lately. If we can connect these documents to his trades, we have them both. What's the next step? We need to catch them in the act, set up a situation where they exchange information for money, preferably with documentation we can use as evidence." "How do we do that?" Elena smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, there was genuine warmth in it. "Leave that to me. I know my husband better than he thinks I do." That weekend, while Jake was at his friend's house, I made a decision that would change everything. I went to our bank and opened a separate checking account in my name only. Then I transferred half of our savings, my half, into the new account. If this thing went sideways, I wanted to make sure I had resources to protect my son and myself. I also made copies of all our important documents: marriage certificate, mortgage papers, insurance policies, Jake's birth certificate. I stored everything in a safe deposit box at a different bank, one where Daphne didn't have access. Finally, I called my old boxing coach, Tommy Rodriguez, and asked if I could start training again. "You thinking about getting back in the ring, Colt?" Tommy asked. "Something like that," I said. "I need to get in shape for a fight." Monday morning brought the first real test of our plan. Elena had convinced Trevor to take her to lunch at Rosie's Café, the same place where I'd first seen him with Daphne. While they were there, I would search Trevor's office at the dealership, looking for evidence of his stock trades and any communications with my wife. Getting into the dealership wasn't hard. I posed as a customer interested in a used Mercedes, and while the salesman was pulling the vehicle around for a test drive, I slipped into the back offices. Trevor's office was exactly what I'd expected. All leather and chrome, with photos of himself shaking hands with local politicians and celebrities. His computer was password protected, but his filing cabinet wasn't. In a folder labeled Personal Investments, I found exactly what we were looking for: records of stock purchases that corresponded perfectly with the dates on Daphne's internal memos. Trevor had made over $40,000 in the past 3 months, all based on information that could only have come from inside Meridian Pharmaceuticals. I photographed everything, then got out of there before anyone noticed I was gone. That evening, Elena called with her own intelligence. "Trevor's planning something big," she said. "He's been talking about a major stock play, something that could make him enough money to start fresh. I think he's planning to leave me." "Any idea what the play is?" "Meridian is supposed to announce the results of a major drug trial next Friday. If the results are positive, the stock could double overnight. And if Trevor knows the results in advance, he could make a fortune, enough to disappear with your wife." The pieces were falling into place, and I didn't like the picture they were forming. But Elena and I had our own plan now, and it was time to put it into action. The war was about to begin. Tuesday night, instead of sitting home wondering where my wife was, I decided to follow her. The family locator app showed her at the Riverside Inn, the same hotel from Elena's photographs. I parked across the street and waited. At 9:30, Daphne and Trevor emerged from the building together. They stood by her car for several minutes, talking intently about something. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in their body language. This wasn't the relaxed intimacy of lovers. This was a business discussion. When they finally separated, I followed Trevor back to his dealership. Instead of going home, he went inside and turned on the lights in his office. I watched from the parking lot as he made several phone calls, pacing back and forth behind his desk like a caged animal. Something was happening. Something big. I called Elena. "Your husband's at his office making calls. I think the timeline just moved up. I'll be right there." Elena arrived 20 minutes later, parking next to me in the darkened lot. She was dressed all in black, like she was going to a funeral. Maybe she was. "What's the plan?" I asked. "We go in and confront him, together, with everything we know." "What if he calls the police?" "He won't. He can't afford to have this investigated." Elena's voice was steady, determined. "Trust me, I know my husband. When cornered, he'll try to negotiate." We walked across the lot together, our footsteps echoing off the empty pavement. The dealership's main door was locked, but Elena had a key. "Perks of being married to the owner," she explained. Trevor was still in his office, still pacing. When he saw us through the glass partition, his face went white. "Elena, what are you doing here? And who is—" His voice trailed off as recognition dawned. "You're Daphne's husband." "Colton Reyes," I said, stepping into the office. "We need to talk." Trevor looked between Elena and me, his practiced smile nowhere to be seen. "I don't know what you think you know, but—" "We know about the affair," Elena interrupted. "We know about the insider trading. We know about the $40,000 you've made using information from Meridian Pharmaceuticals." Trevor sank into his desk chair, suddenly looking older than his 37 years. "What do you want?" "The truth," I said. "All of it." For the next hour, the truth came out in painful detail. The affair had started 6 months ago, when Trevor brought his car to the garage where Daphne's brother worked. They'd met, flirted, exchanged numbers. What began as casual conversation had escalated into something more serious. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," Trevor said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was just fun. Daphne was lonely. I was bored with my marriage. It was supposed to be temporary." "When did it become about money?" Elena asked. Trevor looked at his wife with something that might have been shame. Daphne mentioned some things about her work, about drug trials and FDA approvals. I realized the information could be valuable. I started small, just a few $100s here and there. "And then it got bigger," I said. "Much bigger. The returns were incredible. Daphne started bringing me documents, internal memos, anything that could give us an edge." "Us?" Elena's voice was ice cold. "We're splitting the profits. Daphne's been putting her share into a separate account. We were planning to—" He stopped, realizing what he was about to admit. "Planning to what?" I pressed. "To leave. Both of you. Start fresh somewhere else." The words hit me like a physical blow. It was one thing to suspect your wife was having an affair. It was another to learn she was planning to abandon your family for a life with another man. Elena stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. 12 years of marriage, 12 years of building a life together. And you were going to throw it all away for what? For her? "Elena, please. Don't!" She held up a hand, stopping him. "Just don't." I looked around Trevor's office, taking in the expensive furniture, the awards on the walls, the photographs of him with local celebrities and politicians. All of it built on lies and stolen information. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. "You're going to end the affair, tonight. You're going to return every penny you made from insider trading, and you're going to stay away from my wife." "And if I don't?" Elena answered before I could. "Then we go to the SEC with everything we have. The documents, the trading records, the photographs. You'll lose your business, your reputation, your freedom. Both of you." Trevor stared at us for a long moment, then slowly nodded. Okay, you win. I'll end it." But as we walked out of the dealership, I realized something. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I felt like I'd lost everything that mattered. The real confrontation was still waiting for me at home. Daphne was in bed when I got home, pretending to be asleep. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her in the dim light from the hallway. 12 years of marriage, and I was looking at a stranger. "I know you're awake," I said quietly. She rolled over, blinking as if I'd just woken her up. "Colton? What time is it? Where were you?" "Having a conversation with your boyfriend and his wife." The pretense dropped from her face like a mask. For a moment, I saw real fear in her eyes. Then it was replaced by something harder. Defiance. "I don't know what you think you know." "I know everything, Daphne. The affair, the insider trading, the plans to run away together. All of it." She sat up in bed, pulling the sheet around herself like armor. "How long have you known?" "About a week, though I suspected something was wrong for months." "And you didn't say anything?" "I wanted to be sure. I wanted to understand what I was dealing with." I leaned against the doorframe, suddenly exhausted. What I can't understand is why. Was I really such a terrible husband? Daphne looked away, staring out the window at the empty street. "You weren't terrible. You were absent, going through the motions. We both were. So you decided to have an affair and commit federal crimes? It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Trevor and I, we just connected. He made me feel alive again, like I mattered. And the money? The money was supposed to be our way out, a chance to start over somewhere new, somewhere better than this fading city. What about Jake? What about our son?" For the first time, Daphne's composure cracked. I hoped you'd understand. that maybe we could work out some kind of arrangement. An arrangement where you abandon your family for a man you've known for 6 months? It's not abandonment. Jake could visit, spend summers with us. Trevor has money. He could provide opportunities that you never could. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. She'd planned it all out, rationalized it, made it sound reasonable in her own mind. "Get out," I said. "What?" "Get out of this house. Tonight. Go to Trevor's, go to a hotel, I don't care. But you're not sleeping under my roof anymore. Colton, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, try to fix things." "You can't fix this, Daphne. You can't undo what you've done." She got dressed quickly, throwing clothes into a suitcase while I watched from the hallway. When she was done, she stood by the front door, looking small and lost. "What about Jake? What are we going to tell him?" "We'll figure that out later. Right now, I just need you gone." After she left, I sat in my living room, surrounded by the debris of my marriage. Family photos on the mantel, wedding pictures on the side table, all the accumulated evidence of a life that had turned out to be a lie. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "How did it go?" "She's gone," I typed back. "What about Trevor?" "Same. He's at his brother's place, probably trying to figure out how to salvage his life." "What happens now?" "Now we pick up the pieces and move on." But it wasn't that simple. Over the next few days, the full scope of the damage became clear. Daphne had been siphoning money from our joint accounts for months, building up her escape fund. She'd also been bad-mouthing me to friends and neighbors, laying the groundwork for a narrative where I was the villain in our marriage. The gossip mill in our small city was working overtime. Mrs. Kessler, our nosy neighbor, made sure everyone on the block knew about the separation. The story got twisted and embellished with each telling, until I was either an abusive husband or a gambling addict, depending on who was doing the talking. At work, my colleagues treated me with the awkward sympathy reserved for the recently divorced. My boss called me into his office to make sure my personal issues wouldn't affect my job performance. But the worst part was telling Jake. He took the news better than I'd expected, which somehow made it worse. At 10 years old, he was already wise enough to know that his parents' marriage had been in trouble. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" he asked, sitting at our kitchen table over a breakfast of cereal and orange juice. "Probably, buddy. I'm sorry." "Will I still live here?" "As far as I'm concerned, this is your home. Nothing's going to change that." "What about Mom? Where will she live?" "I don't know yet. We're still figuring things out." Jake nodded solemnly, processing information that no 10-year-old should have to deal with. "Dad, did Mom do something bad?" The question caught me off guard. How do you explain adultery and securities fraud to a child? "Your mom made some choices that hurt our family, but she's still your mother, and she loves you very much." It was the best I could do under the circumstances. That night, after Jake was in bed, I sat in my home office and made a list of everything I needed to do. File for divorce. Find a lawyer. Secure custody of Jake. Protect what was left of our assets. Figure out how to rebuild my life from scratch. It was a daunting list, but for the first time in months, I felt like I had some control over my situation. Daphne and Trevor had made their choices, and now they'd have to live with the consequences. As for me, I was done being a victim. The divorce papers were served to Daphne at her office on a Wednesday morning, in front of her colleagues and supervisor. I hadn't planned it that way. The process server just happened to catch her there. But the public humiliation was a nice bonus. She called me an hour later, furious. "Did you have to have me served at work? Do you know how embarrassing that was?" "Not as embarrassing as finding out your wife is committing federal crimes with her boyfriend," I replied. "But I can see how public embarrassment might be a concern for you. We need to talk about Jake, about the house, about how we're going to handle this. Talk to my lawyer. I'm done negotiating with you directly." I'd hired Sarah Mitchell, A divorce attorney with a reputation for being thorough and ruthless. She was exactly what I needed. Someone who wouldn't be swayed by sob stories or attempts at manipulation. "Your wife's going to fight for half of everything," Sarah warned me during our first meeting. "The house, your retirement accounts, even your future earnings. And she'll probably claim you were emotionally abusive to justify the affair." Can she do that? She can try, but we have evidence of her adultery and financial misconduct. That gives us leverage. The evidence Elena and I had gathered was proving invaluable. The photographs, the trading records, the internal documents from Meridian Pharmaceuticals, all of it painted a clear picture of a woman who had betrayed her marriage and violated federal securities law. But Daphne wasn't going down without a fight. Her lawyer, a slick operator named David Brennan, immediately went on the offensive. I was served with a restraining order alleging that I had threatened Daphne and made her fear for her safety. According to the filing, I was unstable and potentially violent due to my history of boxing and aggressive behavior. It was complete bullshit, but it was also effective. The restraining order meant I couldn't go within 500 feet of Daphne, which complicated custody arrangements for Jake. "This is a standard tactic," Sarah explained. "They're trying to control the narrative, make you look like the aggressor. We'll fight it, but it might take a few weeks to get it dismissed." In the meantime, I had to watch from the sidelines as Daphne moved back into our house. Technically, it was still half hers until the divorce was finalized, and the restraining order meant I was the one who had to leave. I rented a small apartment across town, a furnished place that smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and broken dreams. Jake stayed with me on weekends, and we made the best of it, but I could see the strain in his eyes. "This is temporary," I told him as we sat on my rented couch, eating takeout Chinese food. "Once the legal stuff gets sorted out, things will be better." "I know, Dad. But I miss our house. I miss having both my parents in the same place." "I know, buddy. I miss that too." What I didn't tell Jake was that I was planning something that would change everything. Elena and I had been meeting regularly, coordinating our strategies and sharing information about our respective divorces. She was dealing with her own set of challenges. Trevor was claiming that she was mentally unstable and had been emotionally abusive throughout their marriage. "They're using the same playbook," Elena observed during one of our coffee meetings. "Make us look like the crazy ones, the aggressors. Meanwhile, they're the victims of their own poor choices. What do you think we should do about it?" Elena smiled, and there was something predatory in her expression. "I think it's time to remind them that we're not as helpless as they think we are." The plan we developed was elegant in its simplicity. We would expose the affair and the insider trading publicly, in a way that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. Not to law enforcement, not yet, but to the community, to their employers, to everyone who knew them. Elena had access to Trevor's business contacts, his client list, his professional network. I had Daphne's work information, her social media accounts, her circle of friends and family. We would destroy their reputations systematically, methodically, the way they had destroyed our marriages. The first salvo came on a Friday afternoon. Elena sent an email to every client on Trevor's mailing list, detailing his affair and his use of insider information for stock trades. The email included copies of the photographs and trading records, along with a simple message. "Is this the kind of person you want to do business with?" By Monday morning, Trevor had lost 3 major clients and was facing an investigation by his dealership's parent company. My attack on Daphne was more personal. I created a detailed timeline of her affair and her theft of proprietary information from Meridian Pharmaceuticals. Then I sent it to her supervisor, her HR department, and every colleague whose email address I could find. The response was swift and brutal. Daphne was suspended pending an internal investigation. Her security clearance was revoked, and she was banned from the company premises. But we weren't done. Elena and I had also been documenting every lie our spouses had told during the divorce proceedings, every false claim and manufactured allegation. We compiled it all into a comprehensive report that we sent to their lawyers, along with a simple message: stop the lies, or we go public with everything. The effect was immediate. The restraining order against me was quietly withdrawn. Trevor's claims about Elena's mental health disappeared from his court filings. Both of our spouses suddenly became very interested in reaching amicable settlements, but I wasn't interested in being amicable anymore. The final confrontation happened at Jake's school, of all places. It was parent-teacher conference night, and despite everything that had happened, Daphne and I were both required to attend. The restraining order had been dropped, but we were still legally separated and barely speaking. I arrived early, hoping to get through the meeting quickly and avoid any drama. But when I walked into Jake's classroom, I found Daphne already there, talking to Mrs. Patterson, Jake's teacher. "Oh, good, you're both here," Mrs. Patterson said with forced cheer. "I wanted to discuss Jake's recent behavior. He's been having some difficulties adjusting to the changes at home." For the next 20 minutes, we sat through a painful discussion about our son's declining grades, his increasing isolation from classmates, and his obvious distress about his parents' divorce. It was a stark reminder of the collateral damage our war had caused. After the meeting, Daphne and I walked out to the parking lot together. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "He's hurting," Daphne said finally. "Yes, he is. And it's your fault." She turned to face me, and I was surprised to see tears in her eyes. "I know you hate me. I know you want to destroy me. But please, for Jake's sake, can't we find a way to end this?" "You want to end it? Fine. Here are my terms. I get primary custody of Jake. You get supervised visitation until you prove you're stable. I keep the house and my retirement accounts. You get whatever's left after your legal fees." "That's not fair. I have rights too." "You forfeited your rights when you decided to commit federal crimes with your boyfriend." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "And if you fight me on this, I'll make sure the SEC gets copies of everything Elena and I have collected. You'll go to prison, Daphne. Is your pride worth that?" She stared at me for a long moment, then slowly shook her head. "What happened to you? You used to be kind." "I used to be naive. You cured me of that." 3 weeks later, Daphne signed the divorce agreement. She got a small settlement and weekend visitation with Jake. I got everything else: the house, custody, and most importantly, my freedom. Trevor's situation was even worse. His dealership fired him after losing half their client base. Elena took him for everything in their divorce, including his share of the business. Last I heard, he was working as a salesman at a used car lot on the other side of town. But the real victory came 6 months later, when Jake's grades started improving and he began smiling again. We'd developed new routines, new traditions, a new normal that didn't include the constant tension and lies that had defined our household for so long. Daphne moved to another city, ostensibly for a fresh start, but really because she couldn't find work anywhere locally. Her reputation was destroyed, and everyone knew why. She called Jake every week and visited once a month, always awkward and stilted, like she was visiting a distant relative instead of her own son. Elena and I continued to meet occasionally, comparing notes on our new lives. She'd started her own consulting business and was doing well. We never discussed the possibility of anything romantic between us. We'd been through too much together, seen each other at our worst and most vindictive. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked during one of our coffee meetings. "The way we handled everything?" I thought about it for a moment, watching the traffic pass by outside the cafe window. I regret that it was necessary, but no, I don't regret doing it. Even though it hurt other people, even though Jake got caught in the crossfire, Jake was going to get hurt either way. At least this way, he knows his father fought for him. On a warm Saturday morning in June, almost a year after everything started, I was in my backyard grilling burgers for Jake and a few of his friends. It was his 11th birthday, and for the first time in months, he seemed genuinely happy. Dad, he said, running up to me with a water gun in his hand, can we have a pool party next year? We'll see, buddy. Maybe we can look into getting one of those above-ground pools. That would be awesome. As I watched him run back to his friends, I realized something. I was happy too. Not the complicated, conditional happiness I'd felt during my marriage, but something simpler and more genuine. I was free to be myself, to focus on what really mattered, to build a life based on truth instead of lies. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, I thought it might be Daphne, but when I opened it, I saw it was from Trevor. I know what you and Elena did. I know how you destroyed my life. Someday, I'm going to return the favor. I read the message twice, then deleted it. Empty threats from a broken man who still didn't understand that he'd destroyed his own life the moment he decided to betray his wife and manipulate mine. I'd learned something important over the past year. Revenge isn't about hurting people who've wronged you. It's about making sure they can't hurt you anymore. It's about protecting what matters and building something better from the wreckage they left behind. Daphne and Trevor had made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. As for me, I was done looking backward. I had a son to raise, a life to rebuild, and a future that belonged entirely to me. The war was over, and I had won.